Shabbat Shalom. So let's see how well you were paying attention to the story of Cain and Abel. There is one fundamental question that has to be answered when we read the story, and one that I think often gets glossed over in a superficial way. Why did Cain kill Abel? Jealousy. Cain was jealous, right? Remember the story, we just read it, so hopefully it's fresh. We have the two sons of Adam and Chava, and they come with gifts from what they have produced. Cain is a farmer, and he has brought something from his fields. Abel, on the other hand, is a shepherd, and he has brought the best of his flocks to the altar that they have made for Adonai. Adonai shows favor to both the offering of Abel, as well as to Abel himself. To Cain, not so much. Jealousy, pure and simple, right? So then, it's no surprise that Cain goes out to his brother in the field and ... It's an ellipse within the Torah of exactly how this transpires. Suddenly, Abel is dead. Jealousy. Perfectly simple explanation. No, it isn't. Why did he kill his brother? Why murder? I'm not asking what emotion he was feeling. I'm asking, why did it lead to murder? Have none of you here ever had a moment of jealousy? Have any of you here ever felt that a sibling was getting a better deal from your family than you were? Maybe. Has anybody here ever felt that maybe a coworker was being treated preferentially, a classmate was getting all of the perks from the teacher? You've never felt jealousy in your life? How many of you are murderers? I'm hoping that I'm going to see no hands. If not, we do have security guards on the premise. That's the point that we need to understand. It can't simply be jealousy, because jealousy doesn't promote murder when it comes into the heart of most people. Billions of people alive today have and continue to experience jealousy on a regular basis, sometimes of immense intensity. And yet they don't murder their brother because of that feeling. So let's dig a little deeper. What was the jealousy over?
Greed.
What? Greed. All right, so one interpretation of all of this, in fact, was to push the jealousy to the side for 1 minute, that this wasn't about jealousy per se. This was about Cain doing math. And he came to the conclusion quicker than his brother. Here they are in the metaphor of Bereishit, the only two children of Adam and Chava, who are the inheritors of the world. Right now, they will have to split their parents' inheritance 50-50. But if one of them is dead, hey, I've doubled my inheritance. I am now going to get more. Even if they were holding to the ancient world's technique of dividing the inheritance where an extra portion went to the eldest, who was Cain, Cain would have still gotten 2 portions out of the 3, but with Abel dead, he now gets all 3 of them. You know, it's smart. Why in the world would you share your inheritance when all of it can be yours for the low, low price of murdering your brother? Yeah, that doesn't actually quite work. Have none of us felt greedy before? Have none of us wanted something that another person had? Have none of us even been afraid of losing what we had to another person? As perhaps Cain was afraid that his inheritance, maybe his birthright, was going to be taken from him. He, as the firstborn, was after all being overshadowed by his younger brother, Abel. Abel had received God's pleasure. Abel's offering had been received warmly. His had not. What if that meant that God would favor Abel at the expense of Cain? Indeed. What if he did? Would that be grounds for murder? If it turned out that Abel's flocks were going to flourish in a way that Cain's farm wouldn't, Would Cain be justified 10 years from now saying, aha, I knew God was playing favorites, and killing his brother at that point? Is he right to kill his brother in a preemptive strike for fear of losing his status, losing his just due as the eldest son? Is that a just cause to take another life? No. In Torah, time and time again, there was no material cause that gives us permission to murder. Someone is stealing your car and you are sitting there with a hand grenade, you don't get to blow them up to stop them from stealing your car, even if it's a really nice car. You don't get to take a life to save property. You can take lives to save lives, but not to save stuff. Murdering your brother because you're greedy? That doesn't answer the question, because billions of people alive today and throughout history have been greedy, and yet they have not murdered. It's not enough to simply say he was greedy. And even with regards, yes, please. He was angry, he was embarrassed, he was ashamed and humiliated. After all, God had just said, you know what? You're not so great. Your brother is better than you. Imagine, you're standing before the Holy One, and your Holy One gives a gold star to your brother and gives you a little bit of a pep talk. Don't be so disappointed. You can do better next time, which is how God talks to Cain after the sacrifice fiasco. Well, clearly that would enrage many people. To be patronized by God, not so great. And to feel the anger that would come from not being given that gold star. But the thing is, God doesn't give participation trophies for being good. You have to actually be good to get that. And Cain, if you read the text carefully, was not so good. His brother gave the best of his flock. This is something that we see again and again throughout the Torah commandments and throughout the Tanakh. The giving of one's best, whether it be from the flock or from the field, is not just symbolic of fulfilling the commandment of bringing an unblemished sacrifice. It is symbolic that I am going to try and walk this path with God to the best of my ability. It will not be an afterthought. It will not be a mild inconvenience. I am going to seriously inconvenience myself to do this. There will be costs associated with it, and being good is going to be a struggle. Indeed, that is what God tells Cain immediately after he is upset about the sacrificial situation. It is going to be trouble. Sin sits there at the door, ready to bait you into action that is wrong. And you are going to have to continue to fight. And guess what? Abel had fought better up to this point. Abel was the better person at this moment. So, it's understandable. Who wants to be told your brother is better than you? Regardless of jealousy, regardless of greed, the anger that would create is surely not enough to murder someone. There are billions of people who have been angry, and billions of people who do not murder their brother. So why did Cain murder his brother? It's not enough to say he was jealous, or he was angry, or he felt victimized by his brother's rising side, or he was greedy for what he could have if he could kill his brother. It's not enough to simply give a motivation. There has to be a different calculation in his heart. And that's what we often miss when talking about the story of Cain and Abel. Because for most of us, that calculation is incomprehensible. The calculation is, my anger is worth more than my brother's life. My greed is worth more than my brother's life. My sense of victimhood is worth more than my brother's life. My jealousy is worth more than his life. That is the true underlying reason why Cain, out of all the billions of people, chose to take a life when he felt that way. Because all of us have felt those feelings at one time or another, and yet none of us have thought to murder. Because to look at another person, even the source of our rage, and think, I am going to kill you. Not, it would be nice if you disappeared right now, but I will actually take physical, concrete steps. I will take your life in my hands and end it. Means that I actually think your life is less important than my current feelings. That your life is so worthless that I can pour out its blood upon the ground in order to get what I want. That is why Cain killed Abel. And it is why we continue to be stupefied by the behaviors of those around the world who make that same calculation too often. There are people around the world, in this room, in every room, who have legitimate grievances about their life. Maybe your parents didn't treat you well. Maybe you've had trouble at work. Maybe your boss fired you illegitimately. Maybe you've been discriminated against. Maybe you have had poverty crush you for most of your life. Maybe you have had doctors mistreat you or a loved one to the point of their life passing. Maybe you're part of an oppressed minority. Maybe you've had problems that I can't even begin to imagine. And yet, you have made the calculation that the life of the people who caused those problems to you is worth more than the feeling you would get from robbing them of that life. But there are people in the world who don't make that same calculation. And they make a mockery of the billions of people who have endured the horrors of this world without ever once thinking, I will murder an innocent because of my rage, because of my anger, because of my greed, because of my jealousy. How many have stood up to the powers that be throughout the long, agonizing history of this world in ways that didn't murder the innocent? How many Jews in the pogroms of Eastern Europe decided to raid the non-Jewish villages, to murder the people in those towns because of what the government had done to them from Moscow? There's a reason you don't hear of such massacres. How many people in this country thought that the way to secure civil liberties for more people, whether they be of a different color, a different religion, a different gender orientation, would be to go into a town where I thought the majority of the people opposed my freedom and murder indiscriminately those who were there in those houses? You can't give me any examples? Yes, there are people within every movement that is struggling that do sometimes make that calculation and get to the wrong answer and do murder the innocents. It happens. And it is a shame. And it is a stain upon those that are trying to achieve what is right and just. But by and large, most of the noble causes of this world have been won by fighting against the militaries sent by oppressive regimes or by passively changing the minds peacefully of those who supported such institutions. Terror has never achieved a solution to the problems of those who are oppressed. All it has done is prop up those who have found their calling in the world as leaders of such institutions, and who wouldn't know what to do with themselves if the people laid down their weapons and actually built a world of peace. They make that calculation of Cain. And they may feel angry, they may feel jealous, they may feel vindictive, they may even feel justified. But at the end of the day, they take Cain's route and say, this innocent person must die. They are not harming me. They are not trying to injure me. But they have to die so that my feelings can be validated in their blood. The first murder that we see in the entire Torah between Cain and Abel should tell us something about the fractured nature of the human soul. All of us have that capacity within us. That's God's speech to Cain. All of us have that feeling of that this has gone too far. Therefore, I can commit an atrocity. Therefore, I have permission to take this person's blood. But none of us have that right. Defend yourself, yes. Someone breaks into your house and you need to fight for your life, absolutely. But to break into your neighbor's house because you have been having an argument with them? And to murder their children? No. Parts of our soul will still whisper, maybe it would be a good idea. That's the Yetzer Hara. We cannot let the door open we cannot let that door open into ourselves, but we also must recognize when others have opened that door for themselves and welcomed it in. We will only be able to stop it if we recognize that underlying truth. And then we have to sort. Those who value life so cheaply, who have made Cain's calculation, they must be held accountable and punished. Those who do not must step aside. It's fairly simple in theory, and incredibly hard in practice, which is why Israel has avoided trying to engage in this sort of justice to a full extent. And we do not know yet how deeply Israel will try to bring those responsible to justice, those who make Cain's calculation like this. But we know they have to try, not only for us, but for the people they purportedly lead. For no one should have to live under a regime that makes Cain's calculation. Because if they make that calculation about those on this side of the fence, they surely make the same calculation about those on their side of the fence. All of the world will be better when those who traffic in terror are finally gone. Shabbat Shalom.